Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast. Today, I am interviewing somebody very, very special who I am sure you are all going to love very much so. Her name is Jamie Bonnet. She was raised by a single mother who suffered from mental health issues. She's a mother of two girls, one angel and one fiercely 2-year-old. She's wifey to Casey, love of her life, yin to her yang. She has been in diagnostic imaging for 8 years, specializes in breast imaging, and she loves helping and impact women through their journey. Most recently, she's actually become a coach and she specializes in mind, body, and spirit alignment. Jamie has a passion for all things health and wellness. She brings a unique blend of experience gained working in the health industry for over 8 years. And throughout the years of service, Jamie saw a huge disconnect within the healthcare system. And wanting to create a bridge between mainstream and holistic systems, she created the transformation platform, creating lasting change through mindset shifting. Her holistic health coaching offers a customized approach to help you and any women move forward in life.
Thank you for having me, Olga.
No problem. Thank you, Jamie. The reason, guys, I invited Jamie is very, very simple. If there is one word that describes Jamie, is resiliency. She's in this podcast today because when I first heard her talk at an event in the States early spring, I immediately knew her light, her wisdom, and her story were going to be inspirational to the Olga's Way audience. Wait until you hear what Jamie has to tell us. She's here to tell us a love story, but not the romantic love story that you might be thinking about. Although, as you heard, she is happily married, so I'm sure she could talk about that too, but not today. Jamie's here to tell us one beautiful, heartfelt story that, while might be sad, it is also a perfect reminder that love is everywhere. Jamie lost one of her daughters a year ago to a rare type of cancer. Something that came unexpectedly into her life, and something that has brought her many, many lessons that she's here to share with us today. Jamie's favorite mantra is love over fear. So once again, Jamie, thank you so much for being here. I am super duper excited that you are or have decided to share some of your light and wisdom with us today.
Thank you again, Olga. I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me today.
So, Jamie, where would you like to start? Why don't we begin by just telling us a little bit about your story? How has your life changed over the last 2 years? How you went from just strictly being in the health regular health system to now coaching women, but of course, like this didn't happen overnight and has been motivated by your very significant life experience over the last year.
So I was born and raised up until 10 in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I knew at a very young age that I wanted to help people. It's always been a part of who I am. And I loved systems and how the body worked. And so for me, this was my fascination and my passion. I remember being a young girl and I had those body system books that would talk about all the processes that happen. And I would read that and study it every single night from a really young age. And I would memorize. And I just absolutely was fascinated with the human body. And so let's progress to about when I was about 16. And I was having a lot of problems with body image. You know, I had watched my mom over the years talk about her body and the different parts of it that she really disliked. And she would stand in front of the mirror and kind of critique herself. And she would ask me, how do I look in this? And I would tell her beautiful. And she would say, oh, I'm just so fat. And so I took to that. It became a part of me as well. And I started to do the exact same things with my body. I would critique. And from a really young age, everyone would kind of make fun of me for being really skinny. I was that girl. And I had a really long neck. And so they would tell me I looked like a turkey. And so there was some teasing involved there. And, you know, as you become a woman and your body changes shape, and I started to get hips, then I would do those critiquing moments in the mirror as well. And I watched my mom kind of diet and do these crash cabbage soup diets. And so then I started to do the same thing where I thought, okay, in order to be skinny and what I thought I should be, I just won't eat. And so there came a time where I hadn't, hydrated myself and I wasn't eating and nourishing my body, and I felt really ill. And there was a point where I said to my mom, I think it's my appendix, because that's my medical brain coming out, and I was having pain in that quadrant. And so my medical mind said that I should go to the hospital because it's probably my appendix. And so I made her take me there, and they did all of the tests, the x-rays, the blood work, all of the spectrum. And it came out that I was dehydrated and constipated. And for a 16-year-old girl, that was pretty embarrassing. And so I had the initial nurse that I had, she treated me like she was annoyed. Like I was kind of wasting her time, right? Like, why are you not eating the right stuff and doing the right stuff? No compassion. And that nurse ended up going off shift, and a new nurse came out, and she was so loving and caring. And she talked to me about the importance of nourishment, and that, instead of how the outer appearance was, that it really should be about how I felt and how much energy I had. And so I took a lot away from that, and I continued on with my life. And of course, it seemed like the appropriate path for me to go into medicine. I loved how that nurse impacted me, and I had always wanted to help other people. And I loved everything, medical and body and systems. So I went into diagnostic imaging. It's kind of funny. I thought I wanted to be a nurse, and I hated everything to do with needles. Mm-hmm. And so I applied for diagnostic imaging because I thought, how cool is it to look inside of a human body and still be able to create an experience for the patient coming in? And as an MRT, there's a lot of different placement and modalities there. So that's kind of how I got to that choice. And once I started in the program, it turned out that they had added IV certification to our program. So I ended up having to poke anyways, which is kind of funny that the universe made me face my fears regardless of how I was feeling and my choices I was making. And so I completed the program, did my practice at the hospital and loved it. I loved working with the people. I loved working in the group setting. And I felt like I was impacting not only my patients, but my coworkers. So I did that job for quite a few years. And when I had my first baby, I really decided that I wanted to take a few steps back and maybe go down in time and spend more time with Ellie. I didn't love the idea of going to work every day and not seeing her as much. And so I went down in position and decided to specialize in women's health, in breast imaging, because again, I wanted to make an impact, be the light, and help people along their journey. And so that's kind of how I got into mammography. Breast imaging was that need inside of me to help other women. And so I had my daughter August 29th, which is actually one day after my birthday. She decided to grace me with her presence a little bit early. And 2 years after that, I had my other daughter, Lizzie, in March, and kind of a wintry time also. And after I had both of my girls, I felt like my heart started to change. I realized that I wanted to do more for women, and I started to really seek out what that meant for me. I loved the experience of giving birth. I loved so many of the things that were happening in my life as a mother. And there was so much I was learning about this whole other end of the spectrum on mindset, on holistic nourishment. And I really took an interest in that. So let's go to February of 2018. My daughter, we take her to a movie, and she's kind of talking about how she can't see the movie. Like she's having some issues. But in my family and my husband's family, glasses are they're common with us. So I thought, well, you know what? It's probably just a vision thing. I take her for her annual checkups. I'm not that concerned. I'm just going to watch her and see if it progresses. And so at the end of April, I take her to Peppa Pig. And she's closing an eye now. So I'm like, okay, I think that we should probably take her to the optometrist and just see what's going on. So my husband had a friend who was an optometrist, and so he set up the appointment and took her. And so the optometrist wasn't concerned, but said her vision is actually perfect, but her muscle, there's an issue in her eye is lagging. So I'm going to send you to the ophthalmologist who can really get a better look. They have some additional equipment there that will be able to do a full spectrum exam. So 2 weeks go by, my husband takes her again for the appointment. And this time the ophthalmologist is like, yep, I agree 100% with the optometrist. It's actually like her eyes are perfect, but it's definitely a muscular issue. I think this could be congenital, which means she was born with it. I'm going to send you for an MRI just in case. Rule out any other possibilities. So my husband says to her, you know what? Is there any way that we can pay to do an MRI a bit sooner? Like, I don't think I can wait. And she said, if I thought this was serious, you would be in like the next few days. Try not to worry about it. Don't Google about it. Just continue to live and you'll do the MRI and it will be fine. So we continued on with life. We actually had made 2018 the year that we were going to discover and explore our city. So we did so many fun events around our city and spent much of it outside, and just we were having a blast. So at the middle part of June, we had gone into our pediatrician and got signed off that we were going to have this MRI done. And throughout this process, I kind of decided that I didn't want to be the one to go with her. I know it sounds odd, but I thought, you know what, I'm really worried about the sedation, and my husband is much calmer with these kinds of things. And because of my background, I know the statistics on this, right? So I was a little bit nervous, and he said, don't worry, Jamie, you stay home, I'll take her. He's such a trooper. He takes one for the team. He's so amazing that way. Mm-hmm. And so I decided I was actually going to work that day. And so he sends me my picture that they've made it to the hospital, and she's playing, you know, on these like rocks and having a blast. And I said, just tell me when she gets out. So it's supposed to take about 45 minutes. So he tells me that she's gone in, and 45 minutes has gone by and he hasn't heard anything yet. So I just message him and say, if in the next 15 minutes you haven't heard anything, go and ask. So he waits and he goes and asks, and they're like, we're not sure. And so he waits an additional half an hour after that, and a nurse comes out, and you can tell that she is distraught. He tells me that when she walked out, he could see it in her eyes that it was something very serious. And he is an eternal optimist. He always believes that everything is going to work out. So he's like, okay, whatever it is, it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. That's how he's always been. And so she tells him that he needs to call me and I need to come immediately. So he calls me, and I know in the diagnostic field that they're not going to ask you to convene and do a meeting if it's not something serious. I'm not sure how I made the drive about half an hour from where I was working to the hospital, pulling in and out of parking lots, trying to find a spot. And I was frantic because I knew that this was probably something very bad. I made it to a spot. I parked. I feel like the universe, source, they had my back. They got me there safely because I was full of anxiety and fear at that time. And I walked into the hospital and I saw him holding Ellie, and she was still sedated because they had to do an extended MRI to check her brain and her spine and do all of the parts of her. So she was pretty groggy. And I just remember picking her up and grabbing her and hugging her. And they took us upstairs to the oncology floor, and doctors proceeded to come into the room and tell us the most devastating news any parents could ever hear, which was that she had a brain tumor on her brain stem in a part of the brain called the pons, and that they had absolutely no treatment options for this type of cancer, that they only had palliative treatment, and that she possibly could make it to 9 months or a year, about 2% of the kids, and that she would eventually pass away from this type of tumor. And I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. All of these years being in diagnostic imaging and all of the advancements that we made, I couldn't believe that there was this tumor that was essentially a death sentence, like walking across the street and being hit by a car. Like, she wouldn't make it. And I just couldn't believe it. But in that same moment of feeling devastated in fear, I realized that I needed to love on her and celebrate that time with her. It was really interesting that my brain went back to the fact that the years that I had with her were so amazing, and she had changed and impacted who I was. And she made me see things that I just would never have seen without giving birth to that little human. And so I really decided in that moment that we were going to honor her in any possible way that we could. So, of course, me and that background that I have, that love of systems and our body and everything health related, I searched the world for her. I contacted every mainstream doctor, every holistic doctor, any research team that I possibly could, looking for children that were living. Because if in this day and age we have trials happening, one of those trials could potentially be the trial to save lives. And if I couldn't save Ellie's life, maybe I could help the next children that were set up with this horrible, horrendous disease and be the future and the cure for other children. And so I really wanted to honor not just her, but the other families and children that were in this same situation with no hope and the most heartbreaking nightmare that any parents could experience. And so, given my background, I thought that we would do palliative radiation and that we would do that to try to extend her life and see if we could find additional treatments afterwards to save her. My husband actually said to me, Jamie, I don't know that doing the palliative radiation is what's best for her. She was always a shy girl. She didn't love being surrounded by a lot of people, especially people she didn't know. When you got to know her, she was the most loving soul. But he said if she was 25 and she was looking at us from that age, would she say to us, please do the palliative radiation, or would she say, let's enjoy the moments? And it really got me thinking about how the percentages to me didn't seem like it was worth putting her through that. It was 5 days a week of sedated radiation for 6 weeks, super high dosages, and she would have to be on steroids, and there would be lots of complications from that as well. And so when he said that to me, it really struck a chord. And after that, I decided that we wouldn't do the radiation and we would continue to search for her, but that we would have fun, be outside, enjoy all the things that we could. And so we found a few children that were living, and we decided to try to emulate those children. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get professionals on board. But I don't feel resentful for that. I feel thankful that we had the mindset to honor her and to do what was best for her. And I've always stuck to that, there's never any regret to me because I did everything that I could for her. And she passed away in November, at the very end of November. And I just remember thinking, I brought her into this world as naturally as I could, and I allowed for her to leave as naturally as I could. And to me, that is just like what every mom wants, right? Like it just is what I've honored her essentially. And I knew when she was diagnosed and through the progression of the disease, and after that, I wanted to take everything that I had learned and to create something beautiful, a legacy for Ellie, and to help others and to be the light that I've always wanted to be. And when I thought about going back into diagnostic imaging, my thought was that I've outgrown it. I want to be in a different role and to help people in a whole new way. See, when I was working in the industry, I would be doing mammography on women, and I noticed how they felt about their body, how anxious they were, all of the problems that they were facing. And I also noted that when I could calm them down and relax them, that their experience was different. And so I tried every day and with every woman that came in there to really provide that light, comfort, calm environment for them, because I wanted them to be okay and to want to be there with me and to not worry so much about the outcome, to be more present in their life and in the moments. Because what I've realized from Ellie is that we don't know how much time we actually have here. So it's important for us to utilize every moment that we're here and make sure that we're living it to the best of our ability. And that's what I want to help people do, to live in their lives, be in the moment, and do what honors them.
Jamie, let me just catch my breath here because you obviously are incredibly resilient. And the way in which you tell your story now, it shows the strength of your mind. But most importantly, your level of understanding and self love, because you intuitively chose from the moment you were told your daughter had a terminal illness to step into the power of love. Like, I see why this mantra is so important to you. Love over fear, because most of us jump into fear. Why me? Why is this happening now? What about the next Christmas? Like, our mind just jumps into like just the sense of unfairness. And I believe that naturally we're all mindful beings, and like what your mind resulted to do was pure mindfulness. And sounds like your husband too just enjoy this moment. This is all we have. And I love the theme of honoring her. Now, Jamie, I've had the privilege of working with many moms who have lost children, and I've supported them through coaching. And it's not easy to choose love and step out of fear. It's not easy to forgive life for bringing such a painful experience into your path. What do you think were some of the things prior to this moment, to that meeting, that diagnosis, that sort of prepare you or sort of like influence you to maybe make that choice in that moment? Because I don't think we just land to that type of thinking. I love that you mentioned this nurse that influenced you so early on, and how much she shaped you. She had one interaction with you and you're like, yeah, I'm exactly going to be like this woman. And I think we forget how influential we can all be with one simple interaction. So if I may, just like if you were to reflect back, what influenced you to just choose love at such a pivotal moment in your life?
So I believe that everything in my life has been divinely placed up until that point. I believe that was all meant to happen. Like, I grew up with a single mom. My dad wasn't around often when I was younger. It started there, truthfully, the mindset, because I could have been devastated by the fact that my dad wasn't there. And I chose to believe that that was how he had to live his life, right? That was his journey and it wasn't my journey. And that I could forgive him and be okay with how my life kind of was working out. So let's fast forward to a few weeks before Ellie was actually diagnosed. My friend Selena had introduced me to a shaman. And she said to me, because I'm very analytical, and she said, don't research any of this. Book an appointment with Amber and just go. Like, what could possibly come of this, right? And that shaman actually told me something that stuck. And I feel like it stuck with me this entire time, which is children teach us more than even our parents. And if we believe that we're on a journey and that we're here learning lessons and growing and impacting other people, then I believe Ellie has impacted me in a way that no one ever has and will. She set me on a path that I would have been too afraid to turn to at any other points in my life, because, you have a family and you feel financially obligated and you get kind of in the grind of life. And this kind of set me in a spin or tailspin. But then when I find it kind of like breaks open my heart, and then it grew into something beautiful, what I believe it was meant to. So the three things that I think have helped me through this is self-care, meditation, yoga, finding an exercise that is an energetic release to me, that I can go and I can get all of that pent-up energy out, journaling. So I think my self-care regimen is huge for me because it allows for perspective and insight into how I'm feeling and what my next steps are. The next part of it is I've surrounded myself with empowering people that call me out on my crap when I'm being crazy, that pick me up off the ground when I decide to make a choice that maybe, it doesn't work out the way that I want it to. And they're there to hug me, push me forward, continue to up level. And last, coming as close as I possibly can to what I believe is my source energy, and how this is all an experience and learning, and that I have the choice every single day to wake up and want to influence and inspire and to really be the light and love in a world that I feel like is always, in that fear mindset that a lot of us have. Fear as the driver in our car, and how to kick that out, calm it down, turn the noise down, and start living our life with love, celebration, and joy, which I believe are the highest frequencies that we could possibly live in, and be the best version of ourselves that way. And so I think that those three things have allowed for me to continue on this journey of love and celebration.
That's amazing. And it speaks to, it's interesting because I think you and I have had conversations of this podcast where we share our like life experiences. And, I've been through my fair amount of difficult mountains to climb. And I have a very similar view on stepping into love is what I coach people to. It's a choice, and I never forget that I have the choice to look at my life events and think, okay, what's the lesson? Because you can either victimize yourself and feel like you're a victim of what's going on in your life and be really unhelpful to you and to everybody else, or we can choose to step into the power and the beauty of that experience. And I love, love, love that you say this is just part of the experience, because it helps us step away from labeling something as good or bad. And it's just this is in front of me. This is part of my life. And I have a choice on that attitude, my attitude. How am I going to let this impact me? I see that similarity between you and I think that we're both resilient women who have in turn used the struggles, the pain in our life to do something beautiful with that, and to, help other people view life from a perspective of love, which I think is it's something that if I had reversed the question to me, I don't know that I learned this. Maybe I was born this way. I don't know. But maybe we were influenced by other people in our lives. And I'm a huge fan of self-care. I'm so happy you brought it up, because I focus a lot on teaching people self-care as the main source of lowering stress, lowering anxiety, increasing confidence, increasing their health, like their immune system, so on and so forth. So, Jamie, for the moms in this podcast listening to you, who may or may not have a child who's sick, who may or may not be relating to this particular experience that you went through, what words of wisdom do you have for them? Because I think, like, I'm about to become a mom and I already have so many fears about this poor little kid. He hasn't even made it into the world. And I already want to, like, put him in a crystal ball and make sure that nothing bad ever happens to him. Yet the most beautiful souls I've ever met haven't had the easiest of lives. Many bad things have happened to them. And that's what made them so special. So what kind of words of wisdom do you have for that detachment that you talk about, like, with such an ease?
Well, I think it goes back to the be in the moment, be present. And I think that's actually why the self-care is so important. I used to do like the flow yoga, and I needed to be doing like all the crazy intensive activity. But when you start to slow down and do the yin and like the yoga nidra, and you get really in touch with yourself, and you slow down and you can feel your gut intuition again, and you can be in that higher level of intellectual, in that cortex part of the brain instead of in the fight and flight. I think once you can start doing that on a regular basis, it becomes just part of your routine. So being in the moment, enjoying all of the things, knowing that you can give yourself grace. If you're like a new mom and you're tired, there's no reason that you can't have a nap and not, like, don't feel bad about it. Just start living your life for you and that baby and being the best version of yourself. And don't beat yourself up about all the small things. I think that's so important, because when I had Ellie, I too wanted to bubble wrap her. I wanted to make sure she was doing all the right things. And I cared so much about those milestones, and like, she hit every one. But you're always like, is she reading fast enough? Do we need to have her in preschool? Like when she's 1 and you're trying to sign up for like the very best of something. And, like, I was just a little bit overzealous about wanting the very best for her. But that comes from, first of all, that's a mother's instinct. We want to bubble wrap and protect our children and give them the best life, right? That's how we're wired, I believe, right? And then society also tells us that we need to be doing all of these things. But how do you feel? Like, do you feel like you need to be doing all the things? What does your heart tell you? We've stopped listening to that intuition and that part of us. And I feel like we need to head back into that and just really listen, be in the moment.
And I do love the analogy of children being our teachers. I've always believed that. I think that we got it all wrong when we think that we're here to teach them. It's the opposite.
Yes.
They're here to teach us. And I can tell you right now, the best lesson I've received so far in my life comes from my baby, which is unconditional love. You know, like the journey to having this baby has been long, very long. But the one thing I've landed to way before he was conceived was that place of unconditional love. And I attribute that to him. I think that his one of his purposes was for me to land into, I accept my body the way it's functioning. And I love it that way. I wanted to ask you, for the mom who is listening, who is currently in grief and struggling, and hears you talk and says like, "Oh my God, I want to be you. How did you get there?" Can you tell us about your darker moments? Like, how did you, like, I'm sure you still have them. It's been a year since you lost your daughter. And I mean, grief can be very long and can at times take a lifetime. And it's an emotion that most of us are allergic to having. We're like, I don't like this feeling. This feeling is ugly. How do you cope? What do you have to say to this mom who's in grief?
So I think that feeling is part of the process. I allow for the emotions to come because they come, and they come. Some days they come more often than others. And I use my breath work to really work through it and allow that energy to leave. And I've also talked about the importance of finding a movement and activity that allows for that energetic release. It sounds ridiculous, but I go to spin class and it's nice and dark in there and they have music going, and sometimes I cry. And at the beginning, I cried almost every single class. And I was okay with that because I left feeling like I had allowed for that emotion to come through me and leave. I believe the loss of a child. Actually, I lost my grandpa when I was 10 years old, and I still miss him every day. I think when we lose loved ones, it's not that feeling ever goes away, that grief. You still always have it, but it's about allowing for those moments to come and allowing for them to leave. And to remembering and celebrate, and always, like, for a while I thought I shouldn't talk about Ellie because it makes people uncomfortable, and I didn't want to hurt them because it all of a sudden reminds them that we aren't sure of how long we have on this earth, that we're not actually in control like we want to be every single day, that, you know, things happen, and that as long as we're living in the moment and doing our best, that's the only way that we can really live on this earth, is by making sure we're living out that greater purpose, I feel. And so I don't know if that explains to you, but that's kind of my thoughts on it, is that you have to allow the emotion to come by burying it deep down, by not talking about your experience and your feelings. I feel like that's when we start to close off and we become the shell, and we don't grow and allow for that seed within us to break open.
I think that's such a valid point for people who are in grief generally, and people who go through something like that painful and uncomfortable. In my experience coaching women through grief, I noticed that there's always a sensation, there's a big elephant in the room. And it's interesting because it is the grieving parent who says, like, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. And everybody around the grieving parent or the grieving person is like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. What is the wrong thing? And so I love that you broke the silence. I'm a big fan of breaking silence. I'm a big fan of just being the person who says, like, hey, I'm having a good day or I'm having a bad day, and that's okay. How are you guys feeling about it? You're right. The loss of a child is traumatizing to everybody. As you were talking, you can see me. You saw me cry. Like, I've heard your story. I know your story, and it gets me every single time. I cannot not cry. It's a combination of things. You know, like, I don't know. It's probably the hardest thing to hear. for anybody. And like you said, for you as a parent. So I think that it's so important to encourage people to talk about grief. It is not a taboo. It's okay to have strong emotions. Like you see my eyes now are watery. It's okay to let those emotions come through because they are there anyways. So to pretend that they're not just doesn't help anyone. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about that person who's no longer here. Let's say their name. Let's honor their existence. Even if it causes some pain, because we remember that they're no longer in this form of human as we would, have hoped for or wanted them to stay. So I think that that is such a key message for everybody, not just for the grieving parent, but for all of us to hear, to give ourselves permission to talk about those emotions, to say to people, did people come to you and say, like, I really have no idea how to be around you? Like, what is the right thing to say?
I feel like that's part of the other human experience here is that although, we're not going to be here forever, like this is not the place that we're going to be eternally here. And so we're going to experience death, which I feel like death and grieving are taboo topics that nobody understands how to approach the subject with me. And my advice to them is just be there, just listen, allow for me to talk about my daughter. If there's an experience that I want to share, just to allow that. But I find that when people say the wrong things, I just give them grace. It's because they don't really know how to handle the situation. Like people say, oh, I don't know how you wake up every day. I would like die. I'm like, okay, they just, they feel awkward too. And this is part of the learning. This is part of breaking open that entire area of taboo and creating a voice around it and allowing people to feel protected and that they're able to really share their feelings. I think that that's part of my mission, is to share that grief is a part of life, because it is. We all experience some form. In the mountains that we're climbing, they could be small or they can be large. My life mission here, my mountain is huge. I've experienced a lot of events and a lot of traumas, but that's just part of my life's journey.
It's part of your story. And I think that's such a powerful message, to just love our story. I mean, I've experienced grief, especially over the last 5 years, pregnancy losses, and something that happens to infertility, and you only experience it through infertility. You experience grief every 30 days when your hope and dream of getting pregnant is not there. It's like a loss. It's like a loss of somebody you love, because it's that illusion. So I feel now way more familiar with that grief emotion. And I think something that has been helpful, at least for me, I'd love to hear your feedback, is having a heck of a lot of compassion, especially when I'm feeling that emotion of absence and loss, like that emptiness, that heart that has like a little hole, and you're like, yeah, the hole is there. And just showing up to that emotion, not trying to change it, but just understanding that it's there.
And I believe that our bodies and our mind are beautiful in the way that they work. And I think that we should trust the process, right? So when the emotions are coming up, that's why I believe that the breath work is so important to get us out of that primitive fear mode and into that higher intellect, because then we're able to truly feel and not be afraid.
Jamie, how have you managed over the last year to just be strong? What keeps you going?
I think that it's the fact that I'm actually doing the work, right? And I realize that some days are going to be off and some days are not, right? Some days I'm going to feel powerful and inspirational, and other days I'm going to be longing for my daughter. And I think that that's normal in the process. So I give myself grace, and I try to step back in those moments and say, it's okay. I just want to enjoy Lizzie today. And I don't want to, be working on my business or doing that kind of stuff, right? Obviously, I show up to my clients and I make sure that I'm there for them, but that's my passion side, right? And I understand when my emotions need me to hone in and to give more self-love that day. I think that's what we all forget to do. right? When we're in that place that we need to step back, we feel bad about it. Like, oh, like self-care is selfish. But how do you give to others or give to yourself if your cup isn't full?
Yeah.
How do you do that? You just can't.
I absolutely love that concept. Also, because in my experience, working with women who are stressed out, who have a lot of anxiety, burnout, who are unhappy, they stop showing up to the things that make them happy as life gets difficult. That's when they
Right.
tell me, Olga, I don't have time to go to the gym or to eat healthy or to tell myself I love myself. Don't you understand? My life is chaotic right now. Yeah, this is when you need to show up. This is exactly when you need to say, I am not feeling good. Therefore, I need like me to show up and save my day. And I think
Right.
you do that so well, Jamie. And it's so important that our listeners hear that message, because nobody can take care of yourself better than yourself. And often we can postpone our happiness for a better day, for when things are under control. Like, good luck with that. How are you going to make it to being under control if you didn't show up?
Life is never, quote unquote, under control, right? It's always going to be this flow and like the ups and downs and ebbs of life, right? So I feel like for us, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, it's never going to happen. It's imperfect action. You just have to put your best foot forward, right? And not really worry about the outcome as much. Just worry about the doing. Just get started. Get that momentum going.
Worry about the doing.
And
That's
there'll be times where you do end up, I don't like to use the word failing but to me, failing just means that it's growing. It's a chance to turn inward and to really assess what you're doing and to pick and choose what's going to be best for you. So, I think that's what I do best, is that I allow myself to feel, and I've always done that. And it's so weird because sometimes I wonder, like, was I born like this? Like, it's so interesting to me that I remember being a young child and having the knowledge that I just shouldn't have had, right? The emotional intelligence. But I believe that that's because that's my journey, and I wouldn't have been able to handle and help and inspire women if I hadn't been on this challenging journey and experiencing and growing and dealing with the traumas that came, throughout the years. And I think that that's the reason why I can help others, is because of my experiences.
Yeah. I think this is, I share that with you. This is why my podcast is called The Journey to Happy. This is why my coaching program is called The Journey to Happy. I believe we're in this journey, and that happy is not just a destination, is how we walk every step of our living existence. And for all the listeners, I really hope that by listening to Jamie's story, you recognize that no matter how hard it gets, you can figure it out. You can choose to step into love. You can choose to grab your story, as sad, as difficult as it may be, and do something beautiful out of that. Like, that's a choice. There is nothing extraordinary about Jamie. There's nothing extraordinary about me. Jamie, it's a beautiful soul, like all of you listening. And what is making her be so resilient is that she didn't forget she had a choice. She didn't forget that although she didn't plan for life to go, who would have chosen for their 4-year-old child to suddenly pass with a rare type of cancer? Nobody. It's nobody's dream. It's not something that we grew up thinking, oh, I'm preparing for that event. There's no way of preparing for grief, for loss, for suffering. But we always have a choice to support ourselves, to love ourselves, to take care of our needs, and to make the right choice for ourselves. Like, what is going to be our best possible choice? How can I be my own ally, my superhero? Jamie, you exemplify so beautifully the showing up and being your own superhero. You showed up into your life the way your life was being presented to you, and you saved the day. And I think that that's so beautiful because, like you said, it's not about the outcome. You couldn't have saved your daughter, saved her from what was in her path to go through, but you saved you. You said, Jamie, I've got you. And we're going to go through this together. And we're going to experience all the feelings. And we're going to choose to stay under the presence of love. You're worthy of this love. And I think that that is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So
I feel like if I can inspire just one woman, man, whomever, if I can just inspire one, that is honoring my path and Ellie in every single step that I've made in this direction. So I hope to do that. And I hope to continue to be the light for others in, however their journey is going, however big their mountain is, or however small. That is my mission, is to do that.
And that brings me up to this last segment I wanted to talk about. You have 3 coaching programs currently, and I was hoping you could help us a little bit understand them better. I think this is my favorite one, might be because of the name, Fear to Love, and that's a 3-session journey with you. What is that about?
So that specifically is on our limiting beliefs, honing into which one is holding you back from living the best version of yourself. Which one of those is sitting in your driver's seat along with the fear of making the changes? And how do we quiet that noise? How do we start to build a good foundation around you that you can start to move forward and be empowered?
Awesome. So that says it's 3 sessions. So in 3 sessions, people get to identify what's been holding them back and a plan to move forward. And then you have Find Clarity and Healing, and that's a 90-day program. Tell me a little bit about that one.
That one, we really dive into your habits in your life, how you're living. So essentially how you do one thing is how you do them all. So we really start to figure out what your biggest kind of what's holding you back. Yes, but we're diving more into the nourishment, into the movement, into what kind of self-care can we add into your life, what feels good to you. So that's just really deep diving into your life, your habits.
And then you have a much more lengthy transformational program, Mindset and Shift and Total Transformation. Is your specialty right now grief work? What are you focusing on for that one?
Grief and trauma are definitely a huge part of my programs. I believe that no matter how big or small the trauma and the grief in your life, whatever that looks like, that it impacts how you live daily. And so really getting to the bottom of what's holding you back, yes, but that time frame allows for us to solidify these routines and habits into your life and get really deep down and start to assess what you've been living and how you've been living it. And so I really love working with my clients and for that extended period of time, because you build such a beautiful relationship, and the accountability is so important. I become that. I become the empowerment and part of your life and part of your journey. And so that's kind of more along the lines of what my spectrum of work looks like. But it deals with the pillars of nourishment, trauma, mindset.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting. Jamie, what's your website? Where can people get a hold of you on Instagram, on Facebook? Where can they find you?
My website is ellierosewellness.ca. After my love bug, I decided to honor her, and that's where the coaching programs, the name and the programs have really stemmed from, is my experiences through my life right up until now. So that's that. And then you can find me on Instagram at Jamie Bonnet.
Okay. So that's ellierose.ca and
ellierosewellness.ca.
Okay, thank you. And then Jamie Bonnet on Instagram. Now, if people wanted to follow your journey, I believe you have created some kind of page or group specifically to raise awareness towards the type of cancer that Ellie had.
Yes. Yeah. So that page on Facebook is Ellie's Love Army. Mm-hmm. And I just talked about her life and my journey through the grieving process, what that looks like for me. And I just write, because that's become part of my self-care and healing, is I take 15 minutes every day and I write and I share with my community on there. It's a lot of people that have either experienced childhood cancer or loss and are grieving themselves. And so I think that it's beautiful to be able to show them that this is a natural progression. And I hope that I'm inspiring others on that page too. reach out also and ask for the help and to have the empowerment that they need to be able to work through the emotions.
Jamie, thank you so very much for sharing your light, your love, and your wisdom with my audience today, with me. Every single time I hear you talk, I feel inspired. I feel the most amount of respect and compassion for you and your husband. I think that you guys have built super strong foundation that not only helps you, helps your little one, but helps the rest of the community. And from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely want to thank you for being that type of human, the human that reminds us that we can choose better, that there's still love, but we can find love in every life circumstance. And everybody else listening to this podcast, thank you so much. Let us know what your thoughts are. Help me create more awareness of the podcast by leaving us reviews. I can only bring more people such as Jamie to this podcast by you guys leaving reviews. That's what gets people interested in coming into an interview with me. So if you like it, let us know. If you have messages for Jamie, write them down, and you now know where to contact her should you want to ask her questions, reach out to her, or maybe be a part of her coaching program. Jamie, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Olga. I appreciate the universe bringing us together, and I'm thankful for our relationship every day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.